maps, and meta-analysis. This is Folsom.
Facts.
And faces.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Folsom Facts and Faces. Maclean and I are your co-hosts this week, and we are here with Keith of the Gathering Inn. Keith, if you don't mind introducing yourself, what you do, and what area of policy you are in.
Yeah, Keith Diederich, President and CEO of the Gathering Inn. Um, we at the Gathering Inn, we serve people experiencing homelessness. So the area of policy that I guess I would be in would be homeless services and what we need to do as a community and a state and a nation to better address it.
Awesome. Well, what made you get into this area?
Wow, man. That could take the full 30 minutes. Real quickly, prior to 2014, I was very indifferent to people experiencing homelessness. I would go to, intersections in my car and I would have thoughts about, why don't you get a job, that kind of thing. And it was really out of ignorance, that in that portion of my life in 2014. And then I had an experience where I actually interacted with and helped a person experiencing homelessness, and it changed my whole perspective based on that experience. And then about 6 months later, I got the call about the CEO position at the Gathering Inn. And the two of them needed to happen in tandem for me to take the position here at the Gathering Inn, because if I wouldn't have had the prior experience, I probably wouldn't have taken the position. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Keith, for the for the background on that. Do we maybe that's something we could talk is about the organization itself
Yeah,
a little
okay.
bit?
Yeah, sure. So, the Gathering Inn, our mission statement is to meet people where they are. So, and these are very um, impactful words, and they're very deliberately chosen words. So, to meet people where they are, to inspire hope, and to walk alongside them on their journey to sustainable housing. So, at the end of the day, the Gathering Inn works with people that are experiencing homelessness and helps them transition to a state of having housing. And we do that through three main programs that the Gathering Inn runs. The first program that we run is emergency shelters. We run five of those in the greater Sacramento region, and we run two different types. We run emergency shelters that have a clean and sober component. So you have to be clean and sober to be in the program. And then we run other shelters that are low barrier, which means that while you can't actively use drugs in the program, you can be under the influence while you're in the program. You just can't actively use inside. So that's one of our I call it business lines, because I'm a business person at the end of the day, but a very caring business person in what we do here at the Gathering Inn. The second thing we do is permanent supportive housing. So the Gathering Inn runs 7 homes throughout the greater Sacramento area where people actually prior to they were experiencing homelessness, but now they're tenants and they're actually renting rooms from us at the Gathering Inn. So permanent supportive housing. And then our third program is a very innovative program. It's called Medical Respite. The Gathering Inn's been running it since 2009, and it's hospital referral or physician referral only as a requirement to get into the program. So we're taking patients referred to us from Sutter or Kaiser. They're homeless when they go in to get services. They're still homeless when they're being discharged, but they're really too sick to be on the streets. We're talking people with cancer diagnoses, heart attack, hip replacements, those types of things. Average age of that program 62. So it's a really an older population that we're dealing with medical respite. So the Gathering Inn runs those three types of programs here in the greater Sacramento area.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Keith, for going over that. And I think kind of to lead into the question that I was going to ask, which is I do think it would be fair to categorize what the Gathering Inn does as offering services that address homelessness and some of the associated challenges in a holistic sense, as you just described. My question specifically is, can you kind of walk us through why this these services are important? Or why it's important to offer a variety of services. I think it's probably a better way to phrase that.
Yeah, I mean, a good question. I mean, you want to meet people where they are. So you've got some folks that are coming out of hospitals that need a certain level of care. You've got people that are ready for housing, for our permanent supportive housing. And then you've got others that are still on their journey that are coming into our emergency shelters. So we try to offer a broader array of services to be able to meet people where they are. And I think that's important. And that's part of our mission statement, as I said earlier. Because if you're not meeting people where they are, then they're less likely to be able to be helped through your types of programming. So the larger issue too here in California and then also nationally is that homelessness is increasing every year. And I think in California, the latest point in time count might have been around a 16 or 18% increase over the year before. So the problem isn't getting any better throughout the state of California or nationally. So hopefully we'll get to talk about a little bit about, what needs to be done or things that need to be done differently in order to address that.
Yeah, I definitely think we'll have opportunity to talk about some of those things throughout this interview. But from the perspective of someone who maybe is newly homeless, if I was interested, for example, in utilizing some of the services of your organization or other organizations that serve this population, and I recently just was on the street, where would I start? Like, could you take us through the
Yeah,
typical
great.
process?
Yeah, great question. So the
Mhm.
gathering in, it depends on the program. So if you're in a hospital setting, you would get a referral right from the hospital to the gathering in, or a healthcare provider to the gathering in if that's what you needed for our medical respite program. For our shelter programs, you can self-refer to some of our shelter programs, but others, there's a number here in Placer County, 211. So you would call 211. It's like a directory that would direct the caller to services such as the Gathering Inn that could meet their needs for people experiencing homelessness. So there's a number of different ways to do it.
Awesome. Well, kind of diving even a little deeper into that, and respecting that, every case that is unique in its own way. What specifically do you think that the Gathering Inn is doing that is resulting in the most impactful change?
Yeah, so when I look at people experiencing homelessness, there's a number of different gateways that occur in someone's life that transitions them from having housing to now experiencing homelessness. First one is significant mental health issues that are unresolved or untreated. Addiction issues that are unresolved and untreated. Economic issues certainly play a part. And then you have the majority of folks that experiencing homelessness have some sort of significant trauma in their background that leads to higher susceptibility to experiencing homelessness as well. So the gathering in, what we like to do is we like to be able to, through our case management and our on-staff addiction counselors and mental health counselors, really work with the individual that's coming into our program and figuring out what specifically for you, because everybody's different, what specifically for you is your barrier to housing. And for some people, it could be all of the things that I just mentioned. For others, it could be one or two. So, and that's the part of the journey that the gathering in embarks upon with the person experiencing homelessness is figuring out what that barrier is, and now how do we solve that together? Not that the gathering in does it all, and it's not that the individual does it all. It takes both working in tandem together in a trust-based relationship to make that happen.
Interesting. I had the privilege to serve for a different organization once
Okay.
tackling homelessness, and I remember one specific aspect of that organization was they had case managers for
Sure.
individuals for for a bunch of individuals. One case manager might have 10 individuals they work with. I was curious if the Gathering Inn functioned in a similar way to that.
Yeah, so all of our programs, whether they be the emergency shelter programs, the medical respite program, permanent supportive housing, is going to have case management. There are certain things that we provide. You have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you start out with the basics of food and shelter. Well, we provide that in all of our programs. And now you're going up to, okay, now what does the individual need? They need to feel in a place of safety and security. So the Gathering Inn provides that through its physical location, the way we staff the program. So now you have your basic needs of food and shelter. You're feeling safe in a program. Now it's time to get to the root cause of why you're experiencing homelessness. So case management is a really, really important piece. In fact, out of all the positions at the Gathering Inn, I would say for the person experiencing homelessness, their relationship with their case manager and two other people, the addictions counselor, if they're struggling with addiction, or their mental health counselor, if they're struggling with a mental health issue, are the three most important relationships. Not that other people at the Gathering Inn and what they do aren't important, they are, but for that person experiencing homelessness, case management's the key.
So, Keith, you mentioned that particularly for folks that have some sort of medical condition, they're often referred to your organization through hospitals or doctors. But to what extent do you and your organization work with local governments in the area, and how does that relationship look from a service delivery perspective?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess the way I would answer it for the Gathering Inn is when I look at what we do, and then I look at how we're funded. The majority, over 50% of our funding comes from government grants and contracts. We have a substantial amount, about 25 or 30% that's private philanthropic, however. So we do have a big piece of the average citizen and businesses supporting us. But the reason I mentioned the government grants and contracts is that takes then um, my relationship with those government entities is very important. And the most important piece that I think that a governmental entity that contracts with the Gathering Inn, they're basically looking for probably three main things. The first thing they're looking for is, with the money we're investing in the Gathering Inn, are you producing outcomes for the people that you're serving? I.e., are they moving from a state of experiencing homelessness into housing? So that's number one. Number two, are you staying within the budget that we've given you, like you negotiated it? So, and then the third thing would be, are you communicative? Are you telling us? Are you getting that message out? Are you keeping us informed and those types of things? And I find that that's the important piece when you're working with, well, it's almost everybody, right? Even your private donor. I mean, you're going to want those things, but governmental entities for sure, they want to know that The investment is making a difference in the people's lives. They want to make sure that it's within the budget parameters that they've set, and they want to make sure that you're answering their questions or responding to them when they have a question.
For that philanthropic piece that you mentioned, in your experience, has it been that you have consistent but the same donors that are supporting your organization,
Great
or do you
question.
typically see a lot of like individuals supporting?
Yeah, so last year the Gathering Inn raised $1.1 million philanthropically. We have a signature event that's called Gathering for Hope, where we raise around 400,000. So the other 700,000 are coming from those individuals and businesses in the community. And for the most part, we're pretty consistent with our donors, but we are always trying to add, of course, new donors and recapture old donors that gave to us in the past, but maybe aren't giving to us now. And there's an acronym in the philanthropic world. It's called LIBUNT, last year, but not this year. And it's like that's the donor. Like they gave last year, but they didn't give this year. So why is that? So we have a cultivation process. We have a donor management system where we track what we're doing, all because we want to be in a public-private partnership with government. And I tell my elected officials this all the time. When you contract with the Gathering Inn doesn't expect you to do it all as the government. I'll give you an example. We have a contract up in Auburn with Placer County. They give us a certain amount of money a year. We decided at the Gathering Inn we wanted to get rid of these old metal bunks that the county has had since the 80s and have a new bedding system for our guests. The Gathering Inn raised over $130,000 towards that effort, and we installed those beds in the program, and the rest will be installed in April. And not $1 of government money was used for that. So that's the synergy that a government entity would get with the Gathering Inn that perhaps some other nonprofits you wouldn't get that in. The other thing I'll mention just real quick is we have what's called adopted meal program. So we have a very large 53-foot long, 8.5 foot wide mobile disaster relief kitchen up in Auburn that we operate. Well, we have, I don't know if it's 70 or so outside groups that come in to help cook meals, and they help us serve meals to our 160 people up in the Auburn area. So that's where that public-private partnership is really important, where you can leverage what the government's doing, but then also leverage what the private sector can do too.
Thank you, Keith. I had a kind of another follow-up unrelated to what Justin had asked. And it was when you were talking about the services you're providing, one of the questions that kind of came up in my head was, um, what maybe what is hard to call it an end goal, but I guess like
Yeah.
what do you consider success for the people that you're serving? Because I know that people, enter programs serving homelessness with a variety of different needs, and I'm curious what, general end goals for the Gathering Inn looks like.
Yeah, so we call those end outcomes. We measure our outcomes every month through our key performance indicator process. That's the business end of what we do. Really simple. One, um, when the person is discharged from the Gathering Inn, the person experiencing homelessness, where are they going? And what we like to measure, and we do measure, is are they going to a positive housing destination? Are they going into transitional housing? Are they going back with family and friends? Are they going into permanent supportive housing, etc.? Are they not going back to the streets? That's the first one. The second one is, are you doing it in a cost-effective way? So, for example, In all of our programs, system wide, we serve our guests for $76 a day. You can't get a hotel room for $76 in Placer, Sacramento. Well, at least probably one you're going to want to stay in. And that's all in. That's with the addiction recovery. It's with the case management. It's with the food. It's with the shelter. It's with the utilities. It's all in, right? For $76 a day. So we measure that. So it's the guest outcome of getting into housing. It's the financial outcome of making sure that we're doing it cost effective. And then the other one I like is the recidivism number. And after 1 year, is the person that got into a positive housing destination still there? And for the Gathering Inn, 91% of the people that got into a housing destination after 1 year are still in a positive housing destination. So that's kind of how we measure our success, is those three key things are the most important things.
Well, thank you so much for that. That is truly incredible. That you're able to, one day or one nights of service for $76.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It even includes my salary.
Do you need
Wow.
a raise, Keith?
Yeah, I'm not getting one this year.
Oh my goodness. No, well that truly is an incredible work.
Yeah,
And this is, kind of I guess little not unrelated, but a little in a different direction now. I had alluded briefly that I had worked for an organization in a similar space up in Washington. Um, but I was curious, what other, some of the other kind of organizations, maybe just looking at the Sacramento area, are around providing similar types of services or complementary types of services.
sure. Yeah. So in Placer County, one of our partners is Stand Up Placer. It's a domestic violence shelter. There's organization called AMI. They provide a lot of permanent supportive housing in Placer County. You've got Salvation Army, you've got Volunteers of America. I mean, you've got a lot of providers in this space that do similar type service. We just like to think at the Gathering Inn that we do it a little better, but anyway, you may have to cut that one out. I don't know.
That's no problem.
You're certainly entitled to your opinion on that one, so.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, for $76 a day, I'm not gonna lie, those are really impressive numbers. So
Yeah. Yeah, when you're getting about 47% of people into some sort of a positive housing destination that have been chronically homeless, been on the streets. I mean, I've got just all kinds of stories of people that have changed their lives around and or have been homeless for 10, 15 years and finally make that choice to change. And it's pretty cool when people do. And sometimes it's three steps forward and two steps back, but yeah, it's very, very, very rewarding.
I guess keeping that regional perspective that Maclean set us up with, from your organization's service and just, your own experience in the region, um, have you seen some of the regional disparities in the different cities within the Sacramento County and surrounding counties? I know just anecdotally, I work in Sacramento and then live in Folsom, so I feel like just between those two cities, I see a big difference in the homeless population and services.
Yeah, what do you see? You give me a little reference on the differences that you see.
Well, I think for where I live in Folsom, I don't see a lot of homeless folks.
Yeah,
But I know that there are some in the city.
yeah,
And they seem to be more out of sight. Whereas in Sacramento, it's more, they're congregated around public parks, for example. You see them just walking down a business street. And it feels like it's a lot more present. And that's probably
yeah.
partially due to just the population being higher of homeless folks. But I'm curious from your perspective, how you see that.
Yeah, and I think and that's a really good question. I think I'd answer it this way, and maybe a little tangential to it, is like what I find is um, greatest barrier to really helping people experiencing homelessness. Most people of goodwill want to do something for people experiencing homelessness. They can have some empathy for this situation. But when you start talking about, well, we'd like to put a program in your neighborhood or down the street from you, that typically then elicits a different kind of response. So I would do, I'll definitely do a big shout out to the city of Elk Grove because the city of Elk Grove doesn't have a huge homeless population, people experiencing homelessness, but they decided that they wanted to do something for their Elk Grove residents that were experiencing homelessness. So they, about a year and a half ago, opened a winter only shelter, and the Gathering Inn was successful in bidding on that. And we did such a great job in partnership together with the city. Right at about 47% of folks got into sustainable housing that they decided to make it year round, and we bid and were able to receive that contract. So they're serving 30 to 35 people in Elk Grove and Night in a low barrier shelter program that's making a huge difference for Elk Grove. Same with the city of Sacramento. The city of Sacramento has opened quite a few shelter programs over the course of the last few years as well. Um, Placer County opened up a mobile temporary shelter up in the Auburn area as well. So I'm seeing jurisdictions more and more um, make that choice. And I'm seeing some jurisdictions that still have that NIMBYism component to them. But overall, I think it's getting better.
That's good. I know that's a definitely a huge component to the space, surrounding like cure and care for homeless. So I definitely appreciate your perspective there.
Yeah,
Kind of turning it back onto the gathering in itself.
yeah, sure.
Looking at maybe this could be a wish list of yours or things that you're hoping for, but are there any services that the Gathering Inn doesn't currently offer that you wish it could or did?
Yeah, so we were recently able to secure a very large state grant to expand our medical respite program. But part of what our proposal entailed was to build in an assisted living program for people experiencing homelessness. So I'm hopeful that at some point in the future we'll be able to expand our services because you're going to go to some of the private assisted living programs, you're probably spending 10, 15 grand a month. Folks that are experiencing homelessness that are on SSI disability aren't able to afford those types of program, but they still need assisted living, right? So, and then the other one we're looking at too is hospice care for people that are homeless and are at end of life. So we're also looking at perhaps doing something like that in the future as well to meet that need to have I'm sure you guys saw the article the other day. Over 500 people experiencing homelessness passed away in Sacramento in the last 2 years. 500 people.
That's
It's
I
a
don't know,
huge number. People
shocking.
just dying on the streets and like that's the only place to die, man. So
Yeah.
if we can, get some of those longer term assisted living and then the hospice care, we'd be very, very happy to do that. So
I think that's relevant to at least my last question for you. And to take it back a little bit, one of the things that happened last year was there was the passage of Proposition 1, which was this huge bond for the state
Yeah.
that, among other things, included a lot of funding for like drug prevention, education, other services, and it was kind of billed as this like homeless bond. From your perspective, have you applied for any funding for it, or is your organization looking at perhaps using some of that money to build out some of those services you mentioned?
Yeah, when those grants come down the line and what the parameters are, we'll certainly take a look at those and see if they fit our mission, vision and values. We certainly are always looking at opportunities to do more for people experiencing homelessness and no matter what location in the greater Sacramento area. So we would definitely take a look at that. The one thing I'll mention though is I'm aware of a movie that's coming out. It's called No Address. And it's about people experiencing homelessness. It's going to be released nationwide to 2,000 theaters on February 28th. And the thing that I'm most excited, other than what I just mentioned to you about the whole assisted living and hospice care, is changing the narrative, I think, for your general population, because most people that I encounter don't think homelessness can happen to them. And they're dead wrong. I mean, I've seen it happen to every NBA basketball players, pitchers, rock band members. Um, uh, I mean, just anybody. Could happen to anybody. So what I'm hoping the narrative in No Address will do. It's a theatrical. It's got Billy Baldwin and some other actors, and it's like normalize. Like if somebody's watching it, oh yeah, Billy's a businessman and he ended up experiencing homelessness and other characters, and what they went through. So I'm hopefully that movie No Address will help change the hearts and minds of people. I think nationwide that would be something that I would be hopeful for.
Do a lot of these folks tend to have families still? Like, I'm curious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes and no. At the
Mhm.
core of homelessness, of a person experiencing homelessness, is a loss of relationship, right? I mean, think about it. Like if you're on the brink of experiencing homelessness, aren't you exhausting every single relationship that you have, friend, family, acquaintance, so you don't end up having to be experiencing homelessness? So at the end of the day, if somebody's experiencing homelessness, it's a loss of relationship, meaningful relationships, right? So what we try to do back to the case management piece at the Gallery Inn is part of that process is, where were your relationships and how can we help you repair those? What does that look like? Or how can we help you form new relationships that are healthy and productive for you? So, but yeah, that's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you don't have anybody you can turn to that will help you provide shelter over your head. And that's a pretty lonely place to be.
No, no doubt about that at all. And I really want to thank you for, bringing your experience and perspective to our audience. I know this is homelessness can be a sensitive topic for a lot
Sure.
of different parties, and so I think humanizing it is really, really important in understanding both like, how like people who aren't experiencing homelessness can get involved and help.
Yeah.
With that process and
Yeah,
organizations like
the
yours.
last thought I'll leave you with is when I go speaking at groups, I'll typically say, so when you were in high school, what did you want to be when you grew up? And are you that? So, you get some people, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, but I'm a doctor, this, that, and the other. And they said, now raise your hand if there's anybody in this room that as a career choice when you were in high school, you wanted to be homeless. No one raises their hand. So it happens, it's not when I hear people say, well, there's people that choose to be homeless, I always ask the next question, well, why do you think that is? And so anyway, homelessness is it's something that I really enjoy impacting here at the Gathering Inn and making a real difference in our community. And I think we're doing that every day.
Well, thank you again, Keith, and we're definitely appreciative of the work that you're doing with you and your organization.
Yeah,
We'll
thanks,
be
guys. I
sure
appreciate you having
to
me.
include in the description for this video how folks can get involved if they're interested in donating in your organization or if they
Yeah,
want to
just
volunteer.
go to our website, www.thegatheringin.com, and it's a great website, and resources if you need resources. It's got the little donate button if you want to
All
donate, and it just gives you all kinds of information about what we do. So,
right. Well, thank you so much. Thank
all
you,
right,
everyone, for
thanks,
listening.
guys. All right,
See you
you
next
guys
time.
take care.